No more quarantine at designated hotels for inbound travelers at the airport. Typhoon Noru causes floods and power outages in the Philippines. And Giorgia Meloni looks set to become Italy's first woman prime minister. Hello and happy Monday. Inbound travelers flying into Hong Kong from overseas and Taiwan are no longer required to undergo quarantine at designated hotels. They can also leave the airport by public transport. As Timothy Lee reports, the travelers only have to follow medical surveillance guidelines for 3 days.
Emotional scenes of family reunions were a common sight at the airport today. For the first time in 3 years, families could embrace the newly arrived without waiting for them to complete their quarantine. As the clock struck 6 this morning, the new 0+3 measure officially came into effect. Airport workers removed fences around the arrival hall to prepare for the arrival of inbound overseas travelers and those coming from Taiwan. For Hong Kong returnees, they could go home directly without hotel quarantine. These passengers coming from a flight from Taipei had the first taste of the city's relaxed measure. This traveler said he really missed Hong Kong's wonton noodles, and he was excited to come back and see his family after waiting for 2 years. He added his family did not know his arrival, and that he intended to surprise them. Under the new arrangement, inbound travelers are still required to perform the RIT test before boarding their flights and a PCR test after landing at the airport. However, there is no need for them to wait on airport grounds for the test result. The new arrivals will be given a yellow health code for 3 days, which allows them to attend school or go to work during the 3-day medical surveillance period, but they are barred from entering restaurants or bars. If their PCR test results come back negative, they will receive a blue health code upon their 4th day of arrival. Visitors are also no longer required to take designated transport when leaving the airport. But this taxi driver does not expect a significant rise in business since most travelers prefer taking the MTR's Airport Express. To cope with an anticipated increase in the number of travelers, the MTR announced it will monitor the situation and step up its Airport Express services accordingly. Meanwhile, Citybus has resumed full-day operations on its 4 City Flyer service routes. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Following the cancellation of the mandatory hotel quarantine measure, some guests began leaving the quarantine hotels in the morning. The hotel sector is worried that the new policy will lead to less business, and some hotels may have to close down. Christy Kahn has more.
Starting at 6 o'clock this morning, no more mandatory hotel quarantine in Hong Kong, ending one of the most stringent anti-COVID measures in the world. As the new 0+3 model kicks in, arriving travelers are only subject to a 3-day medical surveillance. This morning, some people were taking their belongings to leave this quarantine hotel in Kowloon. This returnee who arrived in Hong Kong yesterday says he's happy as he doesn't have to complete the entire hotel quarantine period. But some people expressed concern after the new policy took effect. This man says the hotel never mentioned to him the refund arrangement. Quarantine hotel operator Timothy Sui, who is also the executive director of the Hong Kong Tourism Association, says inbound travelers will be able to get their refund, adding that quarantine hotels have experience in handling the issue. But he says it will take some time to process the refund. Meanwhile, the hotel sector expects business to drop after the scrapping of the mandatory hotel quarantine, and some hotels may have to close down. A representative of the Federation of Hong Kong Hotel Owners said some hotels may have to lay off some of their staff members. Christy Khan, TVB News.
The city reported 4,034 COVID cases today, climbing back up above the 4,000 threshold after seeing several days of decreasing infection numbers. Imported infections made up 188 cases. Positive results coming from RATs accounted for over 70% of today's infections. 2 residents from 2 separate care homes tested positive for the virus. 18 close contacts have to be quarantined. There were 1,280 cases from 687 schools. Among them, 26 schools experienced COVID clusters, leading to a week-long suspension of some classes. Infections suspected to involve the BA4 or BA5 mutant strain made up 86% of all cases. And public hospitals reported the deaths of another 12 COVID patients. Meantime, the British pound has plunged to a record low against the Hong Kong dollar after the UK government announced a tax cut plan based on government borrowing. The pound earlier fell against the Hong Kong dollar to a low of $8.2 at one point. Some property consultants said this may be the best time for investors to enter UK's property market. Meanwhile, some analysts said the pound may sink further. On whether there will be a rebound, analysts believe it will depend on whether the UK government will raise the interest rate. Some banking sources expect the Bank of England to intervene and raise the interest rate by November. Overseas, Typhoon Noru blew out of the northern Philippines today after having caused floods and widespread power outages. It is now moving northwest in the South China Sea towards Vietnam. The most powerful typhoon to hit the Philippines this year slammed into the coast of Quezon Province before nightfall on Sunday. It then weakened as it headed across the main Luzon region, where thousands of people were moved to emergency shelters. 5 rescuers in Bulacan Province, north of Manila, who were using a boat to help residents trapped in floodwater, were hit by a collapsed wall before drowning. According to exit polls, the right-wing Brothers of Italy party claimed the most votes in the country's Sunday parliamentary election. Its leader, Giorgia Meloni, looks set to become Italy's first woman prime minister with the help of her right-wing and center-right allies. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Exit polls showed the right-wing bloc should win a solid majority in both houses of Italy's parliament. With results counted in more than 90% of polling stations, Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party led the electoral race with more than 26% of the vote. That's up from the just 4% they secured in the last national election in 2018. One of Meloni's right-wing allies, the former Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini's League, picked up around 9% of the vote. That's down from more than 17% 4 years ago. The other major Conservative party, former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia, bagged around 8% of the vote. Still, this will likely be enough to hand the right-wing bloc around 44.55% of the ballot in total. However, Meloni and her allies are set to face a tough list of challenges once they assume office. This includes tackling soaring energy prices, addressing the war in Ukraine, and rejuvenating a faltering Italian economy. Meloni has played down her Brothers of Italy party's post-fascist roots and is seeking to portray it as a mainstream political group akin to Britain's governing Conservatives. She has pledged to back Western policy on Ukraine and not take risks with Italy's fragile economy. Meloni also maintains a skeptical stance towards the European Union and is seeking to crack down on illegal immigration and promote traditional Catholic values. Although Meloni's alliance is forecast to hold comfortable majorities in the upper and lower houses, its members hold varying stances on crucial issues. Nevertheless, upon claiming election victory, Meloni said the coalition would aim to focus on what unites Italy rather than what divides the country. Any right-wing alliance would mark a stark departure from the previous administration of Prime Minister Mario Draghi, the former head of the European Central Bank. During his 18-month term in office, he sought to bring Rome to the forefront of EU policy-making. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
Italy's PM hopeful Giorgia Meloni has voiced concerns over China while vowing to forge closer ties with Taiwan. She said the EU must deploy all political and diplomatic weapons at its disposal and put pressure as hard as possible to prevent China from causing any military conflict in the Taiwan Strait. In an interview published by Taiwan's Central News Agency on Friday, she described Italy's relations with Taiwan as a sincere friendship. And she has been following closely with unease what is happening around Taiwan amid intensified Chinese threats. Meloni also says Italy's decision to join China's Belt and Road Initiative is a big mistake. She did not reply directly if Italy would approve the renewal of the Memorandum of Understanding her country signed with Beijing, which is scheduled for 2024. Italy was the only G7 country to sign onto the initiative in 2019. In response, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin today urged the new Italian government to carry out pragmatic policies to work with Beijing on the One China principle. He added that Italy should stop sending wrong signals to Taiwan's separatist forces. Protests were held in Athens, Berlin, Madrid, New York, and other cities in solidarity with Iranian women. This came in the wake of the death of a young woman detained by Iran's morality police for allegedly wearing her Islamic headscarf too loosely. In London, protesters yesterday gathered in their hundreds outside the Iranian embassy. Police jostled with the demonstrators as they blocked the road to the embassy. Reports say at least one protester was detained. More than a week ago, demonstrations erupted across Iran at the funeral of a Kurdish woman, Mahsa Amini. The 22-year-old was arrested in Tehran for allegedly violating the country's strict Islamic dress code. She later died in detention. The police said she died of a heart attack and was not mistreated, but her family thought otherwise. Protests over Amini's death have turned into the biggest Iranian protests in years. They have spread across at least 46 Iranian cities, towns, and villages, and more than 40 people have reportedly been killed. Still ahead, accusations that referendum voting is being conducted door-to-door under Russian-backed security in some regions of Ukraine. In Hong Kong, the postage rates go up. And meet Miss Hong Kong 2022. Welcome back to TVB News. In Ukraine, voting continued Sunday in a referendum to annex 4 Russian-controlled regions to Russia, a move condemned by the West. 2 polling stations had to be evacuated due to bomb scares, while Russian officials went door-to-door with ballot boxes to encourage people to vote. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Liz Truss said Britain and its allies should not listen to Russian President Vladimir Putin's saber-rattling on Ukraine after he raised the possibility of nuclear conflict. Tracy Furness has more.
In Donetsk, people are registering to vote in the Kremlin-orchestrated referendum. And according to Vladimir Vysotsky, chairman of the CEC of the Donetsk People's Republic, more than half of the region's population have voted in 2 days, and even more people have voted in foreign polling stations. But not all is going smoothly. Elena Kravchenko, chairman of the CEC of the Luhansk People's Republic, said 2 polling stations in their region had to be evacuated to a bomb shelter. But in the port city of Mariupol, people are hoping for a peaceful life and restoration of the city, months after fierce fighting between Russian and Ukrainian forces left the city severely damaged. This is what people really need, said Elena, Russian member of the Electoral Commission. We have many elderly people here who need the government to protect them and to rebuild our city. Meanwhile, protests against Putin's mobilization orders continued in Moscow on Sunday. These protesters, who would not give their names, are more resolute. We are not scared. It's fine. If a draft order arrives, we'll go. If it doesn't, we won't. In Dagestan, one of Russia's poorer regions in the North Caucasus, more than 100 protesters were blocking a highway. Russian media reported that local police tried to break up the demonstrations by firing warning shots in the air. And hundreds of demonstrators gathered in Central Square in Russia's far eastern city of Yakut Sunday. Protesters performed a traditional Yakut circle dance while chanting, "No to genocide." Some of those who joined the rally were detained by police and put on buses. 700 anti-mobilization protesters were arrested Saturday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in his daily address, emphasized the fact that the mobilization in Russia was criminal, used by Russia not only to prolong the suffering of the Ukrainian people, but to further destabilize the world.
Back in Hong Kong, Cardinal Joseph Zen and 5 others went on trial today for allegedly failing to properly register a now-defunct fund that offered legal and medical assistance to protesters in the 2019 social unrest. The defendants appeared at the West Kowloon Magistrates Courts. Zen and the others, including singer Denise Ho and former lawmaker Margaret Ng, were arrested in May and later charged with failing to apply for registration or exemption from registration within the specified time. 5 of the defendants are trustees of the 612 Humanitarian Relief Fund, and the 6th defendant is the fund's secretary. They all pleaded not guilty to the charge. The trial is expected to last 5 days. Postage rates have gone up in Hong Kong. Local letters weighing 30 grams or below have increased from the previous $2 to $2.20. The rate for letters by airmail weighing 20 grams or below to the mainland and Taiwan has increased from $3.40 to $3.70, while its service mail equivalent increased from $2.60 to $2.80. Hong Kong Post said it made the price adjustments to make up for increasing operational costs. And the winner of the Miss Hong Kong on the 50th anniversary of the city's flagship beauty pageant has been crowned. Denise Lam, daughter of former actor Wilson Lam, secured her victory among 19 contestants. Timothy Lee spoke with her to find out how the beauty queen will promote the city on the international stage.
27-year-old Denise Lam, a professional model, is the daughter of Wilson Lam, a popular actor in TVB in the 1980s. Wearing her crown and with the scepter in hand, Lam said her mission is to serve as an ambassador of Hong Kong. But she said the journey towards victory was not easy, and she noted the obstacles she faced along the way.
We contestants really have to step up our game and read more news and just to stay calm and to just think positive. It's really tough for us to think positive sometimes with all the media and all the outside pressure. But I'm really thankful for this journey. I really learned how to adjust my own mood.
Lam said the recent lifting of quarantine measures is a blessing for her as she looks forward to promote Hong Kong internationally.
First of all, I think the people of Hong Kong are very glad that this 0+3 has been implemented. It's easier for us as Hong Kong to go out and travel around and spread good words for Hong Kong.
Her fellow contestants, Seka Shu and Joey Leung, were announced as the first and second runners-up, respectively. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Miss Hong Kong pageant. Many challenges wait for Denise Lam as she carries on the legacy of Miss Hong Kong through contributions in charity and community services. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
That is the news. Thanks for watching. Money Matters is up shortly. Bye for now.